This is the GPL Podcast, part of the Pull Tab Sports family.
You're younger than my dad.
Oh.
My dad's 50. My dad's 56.
You're younger than my dad. Yeah, that makes me so much better.
Does Eric even know who SBR is?
No.
Yeah, there you go, folks.
You don't be embarrassed to say no or not?
No, I wouldn't be embarrassed at all.
But the Big Ten's a bad conference. That's a joke. If this gets clipped, that's a joke.
Oh no.
We're definitely clipping that one now.
Now, here's Jupiter and Vigo. Good evening and welcome to the GPL Podcast, episode number 269. Vigs, what a successful weekend in Duluth, even though the third period of Friday night was a little hairy.
Little dicey, some weird bounces, but probably the best weekend the Gophers have played in Duluth for like 20 years maybe. Yeah. I mean, it's been a long time since they've looked that good against the Bulldogs. And it was just kind of one of those reverse situations where the veteran Gopher team went in there and beat up a young, inexperienced Bulldog team.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun weekend. Went up there as a fan. I know you wanted to get up there, couldn't quite make it due to coaching and other stuff going on. But it was a fun weekend in Duluth, though. Canal Park's a little more dead these days. That Grandma's saloon is no longer operating. So
just got to keep those sports fans in check.
Yeah, you kind of do, but well, we'll talk about more about the Duluth series, but Gophers are playing St. Thomas this week, and I thought, we got to get Sam Ekstrom on the podcast at some point here because, he was calling games for the Gophers, and of course, he's always been calling games for St. Thomas, but things have changed a little bit, but I'm like, you know what? I want you on anyway, so let's bring him in. Sam Ekstrom, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
See, I got to make sure the audio works so I don't end up like Micheletti. I saw the Micheletti show.
It never fails.
Had a little mishap.
I
got to make sure that I think we're good though.
Yeah.
It's working.
It's funny because, in the pre-show, we'll talk a few minutes, get ready. And the microphone always works for Pat. And then we come back on live and I can't hear you.
He's got mural cred, but no production cred.
Maybe he's just faking it. Maybe he's just pulling the wool over your eyes just to mess with you.
Maybe that's his revenge for all these late podcasts, Vigs.
Hey, we're on when we're on.
You had him on right before he was flying to Vegas. The man needed his rest.
It's been like a running joke with him, too. Oh, it's not too late. It's just, I can't do it. It's like, it's past my bedtime. I'm like, no, it's not bad.
I love Nick, man.
Oh, he is a lot of fun. So, we'll get to the Duluth stuff here, but, St. Thomas actually had a week off after playing, Vermont, but Vermont was pretty successful, a 5-5 tie and a 3-1 win. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, I went there to Burlington last year.
Really?
They had a series, 2 in Burlington last year, and then they came here. So I was at those 2 games last year, and we got spanked. The Tommies have not performed great in non-conference situations in their D1 tenure, and that was just another example where they played everybody competitively last year, like except Vermont. So for Vermont to come back, St. Thomas was healthier. St. Thomas kind of had their full allotment of players. Yeah, to get a tie and a win, they'll take that. Weird Friday night followed by a more stable Saturday. A lot of goals on Friday, and then needed the empty netter to secure the 3-1 win on Saturday. But Tommies have played 3 decent games. 1-0 against St. Cloud State, where they were probably the better team for 2 periods and just couldn't score. And then, the Vermont series that I think was a success. So they're going into this Gopher series with a positive feeling, plenty of rest like Minnesota's had. They both had 2 weeks off. I think Friday is going to be awesome.
Vince, it's kind of hard to predict almost a lot of teams now. I mean, like you said, St. Thomas had a 1-0 loss to St. Cloud. We thought St. Cloud was not good in the exhibition because, even at home, they didn't play well against Minnesota. Then they go to Michigan and don't play well one night, play well the other night. Michigan's kind of the same back and forth. A lot of kind of craziness early this season.
Well, I think early in the year, when teams are trying to integrate freshmen in their lineup, or they've got some key departures that played big roles, you see a lot of teams that lean really heavy on their experienced players down the stretch. And so that next year, they have a lot of roles and ice time to fill. And we've seen that so many times with Minnesota, where it's like, who's going to be on the power play? Who's going to take the big draws? Who are we going to put out there to shut down the other team's top lines? And so you get to these start of the year situations, and it takes a while to figure that out. And those veteran teams have such an advantage over everybody else, and everybody else is trying to figure it out one night to the next. The coach has the big film session on Saturday morning and says, we got to fix this and this. And guess what? They do it the next night. And that's why it's so hard to sweep in college hockey, especially at this time of year.
It definitely
Gophers
is.
handled that pretty well, though, in Duluth. That was impressive. Coming back 5-1 the next night, that was a thorough performance. I've never heard Motzko that encouraged after like an early season non-conference series. That's the sign of a pretty mature team, even though they're young. Don't you think?
Well, Viggs, on top of that, though, it's like Friday night, I was never concerned when Duluth kept coming back, and maybe Motzko maybe he didn't relay any concern when, it was 7-3, all of a sudden 7-5. He knew things weren't going well, but it seems like they still stayed calm and finished the game out. Whereas in the past, that might not have happened.
Well, I think the goals were coming off of weird bounces. Like one goes off a mask and nobody can find it. One goes through traffic right to the free guy. Those weren't coming off of mistakes where your team is forcing a play and turning the puck over at the blue line or mishandling a pass and giving up an odd man rush. It wasn't that kind of game for Minnesota when they're giving up goals. So as a coaching staff, you just go, let's just roll with it. And part of the point I'm making about Minnesota is even their freshmen are guys who have played a lot of junior hockey and are experienced players. And he's got enough guys who have had big jumps in their offseason where I think Bob's pretty confident in this group. He really wants to compare this blue line to the one with all those NHLers that are now playing pro hockey. And I think he likes this group because they're bigger, they're a little more physical, and I think they're a little more even in their games. So, this team's got a lot of potential. You could hear Scott Sandelin talk about it all last week. I call it rat poison when you have an opposing coach. These guys are going to St. Louis. These guys are probably a favorite to win the Frozen Four. These guys don't have a first and fourth line. You got to pick their poison. They're all first line type guys. And Minnesota's handling that pretty well so far.
And he's not wrong either.
Well, I mean, you've got Mason Nevers and Aaron Huglin on your kind of fourth line. Those guys are experienced. They don't make many mistakes.
I thought a big thing this weekend for Minnesota, Sam, was freshmen started the game scoring. And was it Zemer scored both games?
Game opening goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back-to-back days. Yeah. It took him like 90 seconds the first night and then 9 minutes the next day. And the Gophers last year, I think that was kind of the missing ingredient. They didn't have, I got to be careful because they got like 50 assists from Renzel and more.
Yeah.
But they didn't get a lot of goal scoring from freshmen. They didn't get a ton of that. Seems like Paulson. Talk about a guy who could score in the USHL. Zemer seems like he's ready to play. Yeah. And Motzko's not been shy about playing these guys early in the year. Falloon's played, I think, all 4 games. I know I'm forgetting someone else, but the freshmen have had really good starts. And Matthew Wood, it almost feels like he's a freshman because he's 19. It's like this new player who's 19. Oh, he must no, a third-year player, and he's probably gonna, be an NHL stud someday. But yeah, great contributions from all the newcomers early.
And
Viggs, takeaway.
Viggs, we talk about Wood, and all I keep seeing people tweeting, "Oh, Wood, he's so slow. He's lumbering out there." I think he's just a tall guy that looks like he's going slow because he certainly is making plays.
I think big guys always look a little slower. Like you can look at old clips of Mario Lemieux, and you're just he doesn't look that agile and quick out there. He's moving. He's just really big. He's got big, powerful strides. But I do think the thing about Wood that makes him special is his ability to hold on to pucks, slow down the possession, and make the right play. And playing on the line with Kurth and Clark has been a really combination. We were asking Bob about that this week, and he's like, well, there's no real rhyme or reason. I'm just trying to balance out my team, because during camp, he was putting more Snuggerud and Wood all together. And so he wanted to maybe kind of spread that out a little bit. And he's found what he called some showtime with that line. And it's working. And I also think with Oliver Moore, putting him with the young guys, Zemer and Beckett Hendrickson, really worked. I was questioning coming out of the Vegas series whether Moore was going to stick at center. Hat tip to Drew Cove and Nate Wells for pointing this out. I always talk about, Sammy Walker and guys who don't fit at center. But Oliver Moore looked really good at center with those two.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's just, a different style of play with those guys, with how they exit the zone, but they all looked cohesive as a unit.
Yeah, how about 22 points through 4 games for that Kurth Moore line? That's pretty ridiculous.
Showtime.
Kurth Clark. Sorry, Kurth Clark.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, we mentioned, the freshman scoring in a hostile environment, Zemer both nights kind of quieting the crowd, Vigs, really quick. And we really haven't seen that much from the young players in Duluth, the games they've played for many years.
Well, that's kind of the book on Zemer, is that he's a competitive guy. In the lower junior ranks with the development team, he was named captain of a lot of those groups as they go play in international tournaments. And it's because his teammates can rely on him to be a big player in big games. And so I think he's just stepping right into that role at Minnesota, and it gives Bob a lot of freedom with his depth. We asked him, is he going to change things up? He's like, everything's working right now, but I don't think I'm doing anything special to create that chemistry. We could probably mix it up with a lot of different guys and still be okay.
So this weekend, Sam, I went to Duluth as a fan. I like to go to at least one series a year. It just keeps me sane. It keeps me going. It's not thinking about, being behind the camera and trying to get the photo. I turned around to a person I know at the game. I go, Snuggerud's eventually going to get going here. And this team could be really dangerous. And literally 30 seconds later, he did finally get off the schneid and score a goal this weekend. Kind of a wild shot, but he just needed to get going.
Yeah, this has been a little bit of the story with Snuggerud, right? Some cold stretches followed by some explosions.
Mm-hmm.
You think about last year, the Snuggerud we saw coming off of World Juniors was at an entirely different level. And then once the adrenaline wore off from that, there was a little bit of a lull there, I think. And that lull might have been what got him back for his junior year.
Mm-hmm.
If he continues that pace we saw in early January, I think he's going to St. Louis. But a little bit of a slower end of the year. He's back, unfinished business. He cited Brock Faber. He said, hey, I saw Faber come back a junior year, almost win the Natty. I want to do the same thing. And he gets to be a 100-point guy with the Gophers, gets to put together probably 3 consecutive 20-goal seasons. I don't know how close he is to Dad's stats. I think Dad had like 140 points with the Gophers. So
a little different era, too.
Snuggy's got a ways to go. He's going to need like an Ohtani 40-40, 50-50.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Snuggerud scored 4 goals against St. Thomas last year in the series. So I could see this being a big weekend for him, especially at the X under the bright lights. I think that's probably a setting where he's going to thrive.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to that because I would love to see Snuggerud succeed. We all want to see Snuggerud succeed, Vigs. He has been very much up and down kind of his entire career at Minnesota.
Yeah, and I think that gets to him, too. You can see his body language when he gets frustrated. And I think for his growth, he's got to be able to be a little more resilient in these situations where he's not putting up as many points as he'd like. And, I think they're going to come. I still am waiting for that power play to look a little bit better. It still looks a little too robotic. And
a little slow, too.
A little slow because they kind of get in their positions and they want to be there and make the plays that they've got. These guys are first-round picks because they're so talented. So they've just got to kind of free up that flow state and figure it out from there. And maybe just getting some quick shots with some rebounds and winning those second chances and tiring down a penalty kill is going to be good for them. It's hard to know, but it's still something for this team to unlock.
So, Sam, I'm looking at your equipment there. You got a Shure mic. You got the headphones like I do. You are all over the place on the internet. You've got your Vikings podcast. I saw you kind of filling in a little bit on a Timberwolves podcast. So besides your St. Thomas duties, what else are you doing here? Because it seems like I'm seeing you all over the place.
Yeah, someone came from North Carolina and said, provided all this equipment. I have no clue what I'm even speaking into, really. But so the company that gives me a 401k, it's the Locked On Podcast Network, and they are a national podcast network at the local level, if that makes sense. They've got 250 shows in local markets, and they combine that strength into a national network that they sell to some of the biggest advertisers. And it's a really brilliant concept, and that's my full-time gig. So I talk Minnesota sports for them, and then I work some national projects for them on the back end. But that's my full-time job. So I'm down here every day talking Minnesota sports for Locked On, a lot of Vikings, a little Wolves, little Twins, little Wild, little Gophers, of course, but it's pretty heavy football. But I'm talking into a microphone all the time. And I think it keeps my voice fresh, so it's like good conditioning for the hockey season. But yeah, I'm staring into some studio lights right now. I'm kind of squinting. It's a little too late at night for this.
You can turn them down. Wait, you can turn them down for overtime.
Perfect. Is that when I get to pour another old fashioned? I was told it's okay.
Oh,
if
yes.
I sip this on the show. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Old fashioned. And actually I got onto brandy old fashions in Wisconsin. I believe it was a couple seasons ago, and I was there. There was an early Wisconsin game for Minnesota. Since it was done, one of the supper clubs was open. I went to a supper club, had a great time with Wisconsin fans. And one thing you've probably noticed is that these college hockey fans we're a little bit different. It's a very niche group. I mean, obviously, we have a podcast, but it's not going to be a national level. But the college hockey crew is quite passionate.
Passionate about old fashions or just passionate in general?
Well, passionate about drinking too. Yes.
No, I know exactly what you're saying. I love the college hockey community. I love talking to the coaches in college hockey, the fans, the writers. I mean, the people that cover this sport are so committed to the game because most people, I feel like you cover this sport because you love it. You don't cover it because you're like filling a void for the local paper. You got forced into it. No, like you're covering it. Oftentimes it might be your own website. It might be some kind of independent startup or podcast. And the people that follow college hockey are some of the most dedicated that I know. So props to how many shows is this? Like 269.
We do them once a week during the season. So, and it's our 14th season. We were doing a podcast long before many others were. So we've been around a long time. We just don't do a show all the time. Just
you were around before the Locked On Podcast Network. I will give you that. You were predated us by a long ways. Well done on your guys' part. So
it's because of that passionate fans. We started with we recorded an audio podcast with a few of us. Like, this could work. Well, let's find out a way to do it live. So we did it live via audio, an app called Mixler, and people seem to really enjoy that. They could send us questions and we could respond live. And then we figured out, with Zoom and now StreamYard doing video live. Yeah, it's not going to be as polished as a recorded podcast, but I love the interactability of the fans, with people chiming in and chat. Things go wrong. That's how it works. And so I love it. And you guys do a lot of live stuff too. And it's fun.
No, we've done a huge pivot to live. Live is the way to go. So I oversee our national postcast initiative. So there's like 15 markets we're in right now where we have someone doing instant reaction shows live after all the major pro games in that market, because of that interactivity, it actually helps the YouTube algorithm a ton. So YouTube sees the engagement that you guys get and it amplifies it. And it's all about getting seen on that home feed. Like the subscribers are nice on YouTube, but really you just want to get seen on the home screen. most people that watch aren't even subscribers. I get really
Yeah.
into the science of this with the day job, and you're absolutely nailing it with the live concept. I love it. You're way ahead of the curve.
And we've been having fun with it. So
That's what's most important.
And that's why we do it. We've been, like I said, 14 seasons. So it's been a lot of fun. One thing that has changed, though, the last 2 seasons, you had been calling Gopher hockey for, most of the home games, whether it was, Fox 9, Fox 9 Plus. But now Fox 9 wants to have a little more involvement of the broadcast and kind of bringing in Jim Rich instead of you. Obviously a big downer for you, but you could probably understand where they're coming from on the opposite end. So probably a lot of mixed feelings.
There's a definite sting to it when you get that news, because this is a job that you aspire to. It's a job that means a lot to a lot of people. And when, I grew up in the upper Midwest, I've got a lot of Minnesota friends that love the team. They love listening to me call the games, and like, you're very proud of that aspect. But again, how privileged am I to have been in a position where I get to fall back and be the voice of the other D1 team in the metro area and the Tommies. So, and I absolutely love the Tommy gig. They've been nothing but great to me, and they kind of let me have this side gig doing Gophers TV. And I guess if there's a silver lining this weekend on Friday, I don't have to swap out like the maroon and gold tie for the purple tie, because last year, Friday night I did it from the Tommy's perspective. Saturday I did it from the Gophers perspective on Fox 9. Don't have to walk that line anymore, but I'll miss it. I'll miss it considerably. The energy in Mariucci and working with Pat, and the season before that, Ben Clymer. It was so much fun. Some of my best memories. But, Fox has their job to do. They're trying to create chemistry and cohesion with their newscast into their pregame show, into the broadcast booth. And Jim has been a stalwart in this market for how long? And I think he'll do a great job. We've heard him call St. Cloud State games for forever. So nothing but the best of luck to those two. I know there obviously no ill will on Jim's part toward me, none from me to him. I wish him the best.
Well, Viggs, it's been interesting. TV has been a little chaotic since FSN got rid of Frank Mazzacco, because Mazzacco was the stalwart for over 20 years at the time, from the late 80s until 2010. And then it's been a bit chaotic since then.
Yeah, I think the TV has been a challenge for Minnesota as a whole to figure out post, Wild. Like trying to figure out where they fit in, because they're not the big hockey team in the state anymore. So they've got to figure out how to share it. And you've seen the U try to do a lot of different things. And, the Big Ten coverage is one thing. And then the Fox coverage and the ESPN and all these different networks. And I know a little bit for this year, the U really wanted to try to have as consistent a presence as they could on Fox 9. And so they were trying to figure out how to sell sponsorship packages for this entire season. And so I think they were really trying to drive that, and we'll see how it goes. I'm used to all these different people coming in, and, that's how we've gotten to know Cappy and Dan Kelly and things like that. And Ben Holden, with all the variety of broadcasters. But, this year will be interesting to watch. And, I'll be watching to see if Jim Rich wears that black and red tie to one of the games this year, because I don't know how many maroon ties he has in the closet.
Viggs, I want to say I heard back in 2010, or actually it was before, I can't remember, sometime in that time when they were looking for another guy, that he might have been up for the job back then. I think it was when Doug McLeod got it. I want to say he was interested then, and they went with Doug McLeod, and then we had Charlie Beatty for a little while, and he got out of the business completely. So, Sam, please don't get out of the business. We like you here.
The plans to stick around. I've got already a Gophers volleyball gig on FS1 on the 29th of November. So I will be on campus in a month, calling a Gophers game on cable. So we're not going anywhere.
And you'll be calling the radio Friday night, won't you?
Yeah. So I'll be at Mariucci Friday. I'll have on AM 1500 ESPN radio call Friday night, and then from the Tommy side of it, Fox 9 Plus Saturday at the X. So you can't get rid of me. I'll be with Mark Parrish on Saturday.
Oh boy,
calling that one. And we had the thriller last year. We had the 6-5 overtime Snuggerud walk-off, Parrish and I last year. So we're going to run it back, see what happens. What do you guys think of the rivalry, Gophers and Tommy so far? 2 games in, obviously, but 2 more this year. Tommy's gaining a little more relevance. Where do you think that's at?
I always think a rivalry is built when the season's on the line. So it's going to take a while. You need to play someone in the playoffs, and some bad blood needs to. When these non-conference games, it might take a little longer. But I think personally that, you think of the traditional rivals, North Dakota, Wisconsin, UMD, St. Cloud. All of those teams have ended Minnesota's season. How many times did Michigan end our season back in the 90s? And even they weren't even in our conference at the time.
Yeah.
And they were a big rival for me. So what do you think, Viggs? I think it's going to get there, but maybe more important games first.
I do think the fans make a rivalry. And that's the one thing I think the Tommies instantly have. You look back at highlights from the Excel game last year, and there were a lot of students in the building, and there were a lot of alumni and Tommy community people that really are rallying around this program. And I think that's going to allow this to heat up quicker than maybe some of the Minnesota rivalries with Minnesota State and St. Cloud when they went to D1, because that was kind of a slow buildup, I think, for those programs. You look at the money the St. Thomas community is investing into athletics. They are just getting cash injections to build buildings and give scholarships and build all the things that programs need to be successful. They are doing that very quickly. So this is like a Silicon Valley startup, and they're arriving on the scene. And that's why they're such an attractive school that can get into a conference and get into the next conference and attract a big name coach. And I think this rivalry is going to grow pretty quick.
And probably cause controversy, Sam, because they came close to winning the CCHA last year, and it would have been, okay, you win the playoff title. Second place team goes to the tournament instead. There's a very good chance of that happening this year as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think there's a vote in January to see if the Tommies could be eligible next year for the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm.
They're hoping to expedite it by 1 year. If that fails, then they have to sit 2 more years, which is the 2 more years that they have in the CCHA.
And that's school wide though, isn't it? All sports.
Correct. Yes, it is. The Phil Eston, athletic director, is super optimistic that it's going to pass and that they'll be eligible next year, which I think coincides perfectly with what's probably going to be their best team. Going to have the new arena, probably a chance to flex their muscles from kind of a fan support standpoint for the first time, because they've been stuck off campus, tiny arena, freezing arena, no eligibility in the cards. Hard to get people to come out in January for a Lake Superior State series. It's tough. It's tough. But with the new building, more on the line, and then the better conference coming 2 years down the road, I think we'll start to see the support that we've seen the Tommies get for basketball and the Tommies get for football. And I would expect hockey will be the same once you have a Duluth, a St. Cloud State, Denver, coming in there, Arizona State. Like the NCHC rivalries have so much more name recognition that I think we're going to start to see a lot more purple and gray coming out to hockey games here next year.
Well, I must say that personally, there was a nice highlight that you called for GPL last year. And I thought I would just play this since it was against the Colorado college team when Close got a stick to the face, and I happened to capture it. And you talked about it on the broadcast here. Here's a clip of that. I just need to thank you for this.
And he had a close call last night. We saw a photo courtesy of Gopher Puck Live. He had a stick go into his goalie mask on the 5th goal scored. Yeah. He's fortunate that he didn't suffer an injury. An incidental stick going into his mask. A wild photo if you haven't seen it.
So thank you for mentioning us on that. It was pure luck shot, but
what a photo. What a photo.
Scary though.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously, a millimeter from having an eye gouged out. Ugh, that was crazy. Right. Great job on your part. Are you doing photos
I was shooting for the bench there, so I got lucky.
How many games a year do you do photos for?
Any game I'm there.
Awesome. Because
I'm, Vigo will do the writing, or Chris Ekes will do the writing for us, and I will take the pictures. I'm obviously not at every game, so I don't always have pictures because, I have a life here too. Just like Vigs, you don't go to every home game either. We're a fan site where we do as much as we can and try to do as much as we can for the people who use our site or follow us on Twitter and whatnot. So I will be there both games this weekend. In fact, I was in the photo box for that overtime goal that Snuggerud. He skated right out in front of me. I went right around, and some of us weren't used to that kind of move.
Not a lot of resistance either.
No, he did. I think the defenseman was surprised in that Vigs, because we don't usually see Snuggerud make that type of power move.
Yeah, he's usually just looking to shoot. And so, for him to maybe break his little streak here, he's got to do unexpected things like that.
Yes.
I mean, he's got 43 college goals. Like, what do you think the heat map looks like of where those goals were scored from? Do you think it's mostly like at the blue line, in the circles? Like, I don't think there's a lot of goals that are in that in or near the crease for Snuggie.
I think most of them are in the OV spot. That off wing circle. He loves to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Or that CC game, he was just about halfway in the zone, just top of the circle, maybe shooting, and yes, he had the hat trick that night, but I don't think the keeper was that good. I know, Vigo, you mentioned a couple weeks ago that some of those he probably should have had.
And Barrett was supposed to be good. He was supposed to be really good.
He was like the NCHC goalie of the week, I think, coming into that weekend. And I know Chris Mayotte really likes him as a goalie and leans on him. It almost seemed like Umberko was having a hard time seeing the puck that night.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, the lighting last year was such a controversial thing to a lot of people. Sometimes the angles would be different and the number of people in the seats, could impact the vision. And he just was having a hard time finding it.
There was a noticeable change because of my first year on Valley Sports when they had the old rink, old lighting. The way it came across on TV, I thought was radically different and not for the better last year. Yeah, the lighting and the glare off the ice, it was a little unattractive, I thought. And that's nothing against anybody. It's just kind of a product of the renovation.
Well, it is a product of the renovation because, before, they had individual lights coming straight down on top of the ice. Now you have the bank lighting. I would find when I was in the box, I could turn around and try to look at the people, but I'd be getting the glare from the behind me hitting the glass, and I couldn't see people at a certain angle. I'd be having people waving at me. I'm like, and I couldn't see them. So, well, we know Craig Floor, and he'll probably have them adjusting that thing. I know the company who hung them say, "Oh no, they're fine." Well, they're going to make adjustments, so hopefully they're doing that during this off season. So, Vigs, we need to talk about some of our sponsors here, and I've got Jimmy's up on the list, and you know what you like from Jimmy's.
Yeah, I've been walking a Cub down on the quarry quite a bit lately, and I've seen the Jimmy's caramel dip, and I've been buying tubs. I like it. My kids like it. It's apple season. We just dip them in the caramel dip. We warm it up in the microwave, put it in some mugs, and, it's fall. So get your Jimmy's caramel dip. They've got the sea salt. It's great. They're at other grocery stores as well. And, if you've got some sort of barbecue stuff, maybe you want to get some Jimmy's salad dressing and dips. Don't you be messing with my dressing.
We've also got Lunch Bucket Hockey there, Vig. Sorry, I was muting as I was taking out my sweatshirt there. But Lunch Bucket Hockey, I don't need to get one of those hats. I love those hats.
Yeah, their founder just celebrated a birthday this week. A couple local guys who, do pick up hockey, Friday lunchtime skates. What we do when we get older, we got to find time to play hockey because there's nothing like it. Unsung heroes, greatest game on ice, wearing their apparel that they've come up with, check out their stuff if you're looking for some beer league jerseys or you want to get a hat just to show off the attitude because you've got the hardworking grit and grind. You're a lunch bucket hockey player.
And of course, we thank Lunch Bucket Hockey and Jimmy's for being sponsors of the GPL podcast. Well, now it's time, Viggs. Your top 20 this week. Denver's still at the top.
They earned it. They put up that 10th championship banner. They've got a lot of their guys back from that team. Maybe they're not the best team. There's a voter who thinks Cornell's the best team on the USCHO poll. There is now a voter that thinks Minnesota's the top team.
Who is doing that, I wonder? I wonder if Jess still has a vote and he's doing it.
It's not Jess.
Sounds like he knows.
I do know.
It's probably Cappy.
Anyway, I'm not going to go any more than it's not Jess. But Denver's got my top spot still. And then we've got the Boston schools, BU, BC. They still look pretty good. And I put Minnesota up to 4 after how they looked against Duluth. I still think they played really well against Omaha, probably deserved the win against them with all the shots they had and all the chances. But when they didn't pull it off, I dropped them down a little bit. And I just thought they earned it. So they go up a little bit. One of the big surprises in the poll, Maine had a really good weekend. Mm-hmm. They pulled off the sweep of Quinnipiac, if I'm remembering right. Mm-hmm. Pretty impressive for Maine. Ben Barr's got things going there. Alfonso Reno is sold out for that weekend. They're going to be good. They're kind of an old blue blood.
Nice to see them back.
Korea, yes. Jim Montgomery, those baby blues probably gave us some
2002
bad memories when I was like a middle schooler probably, but they'll be back. Maybe we'll see them in St. Louis. I don't know. The other things in the top 20 that I saw, Michigan still looking a little inconsistent.
Yep.
Western Michigan bumped up a little bit. They had a good weekend. Omaha, not so good a weekend.
No, after
probably should have put Augustana in my top 20 after that weekend. Kind of an afterthought, They should be in there. If they have a good weekend coming up, they're going to be in my top 20.
But I noticed a top 10 team from just a few weeks ago is now gone. And the team that swept them this past weekend, or actually got 5 out of 6, is now number 19. You got Ohio State there at number 19 after getting 5 of 6 points at Wisconsin. Wisconsin cannot score, Viggs.
They cannot score. They are getting some pretty good shot differentials, but they're not putting the puck in the net. And I don't think I was as high as the rest of the country was on Wisconsin. I don't know if I had them in my top 10. I had them kind of in the 12s, I think. But after a weekend like that and how they've looked, Wisconsin's going to have to earn their way back in. Mike Hastings has his hands full. We talked about it a little bit last week. He's discarded a lot of talent. And so he's got to deal with this roster and figure it out. So they don't have an easy stretch coming up. They've got some really tough games. They're going to Denver this weekend, and I don't think it gets any easier for them after that.
So, Sam, this is Vigo's top 20. You question anything, or would you have things a little different?
I'm not going to question the master of the top 20. I'll respond, though, to a couple things that were said. Augustana, sneaky candidate to be in the NCAA tournament this year. That's my hot take of the show.
Okay.
Because they're eligible because only one program went D1. They don't have an ineligibility period like the Tommies. So they could make it. Furthermore, they can be the number 1 seed in the conference by points percentage because they're only playing half a schedule. Go figure. They're playing half a conference schedule, but they can win the conference.
I've got notes on that. Because it's come up on USCHO, College Hockey News, a bunch of other podcasts about why they're playing that half of schedule. It's because as they were accepted in the league kind of early, they had a lot of scheduling agreements already made with other schools. And the cost to get out of a scheduling agreement and contracts is usually anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 a series. Augustana just built a new rink. They're not going to look to spend another $250K trying to buy out these scheduling agreements. They just had to get these games played. Now they can play a full schedule. So that's why it's so goofy this year. I know Jupe knows I do freedom of information and act requests on these scheduling agreements. That's how it works. And, especially coming out of COVID, schools did not want to do a lot of schedule rework.
Well, I don't know this for a fact either, but there might have been a little bit of a ripple effect from the Tommies making their announcement to leave. And then they kind of threw Augustana a bone and said, hey, you're kind of like quickly becoming a pinnacle program in our conference. You can be a full member this year, because this was supposed to be, I believe, another ineligible postseason tournament for them. But I think they expedited it 1 year, I believe.
Yep, they did expedite it, but they couldn't get out of those scheduling agreements
to
play a full season.
Correct. So it is wacky this year.
Yeah.
So that's my hot take, Augie to the big dance.
I don't think that's a bad call. I mean, hey, win, baby. Just win, baby.
As Garrett Reboyan says, they hold the pen.
They
Hashtag.
do.
Hashtag hold the
pen. So, we're still seeing more inconsistency, Vigs, with, the conference teams not doing so well in non-conference schedule. Are you concerned about it yet? Because I am a little, because, win, baby, win for Minnesota, yes, is good, but it still could affect them in the long run with all the ups and downs of the Big Ten and non-conference play.
But if you look at the Big Ten as a whole, in those interconference records, they're still the best conference in the country. They're still ahead of NCHC. They're still ahead of Hockey East. The conference has done enough to put themselves first. I think their win percentage is like 680 or something like that. So these losses may look really big, but overall the league is doing well. Like I think Notre Dame lost to Alaska this last weekend. That was a tough one probably for the Big Ten, and then the Lindenwood, Wisconsin losses were bad as well. But overall the conference is doing pretty well.
I got Corey V here saying Mr. Pitlick settled in quickly in Cato, Vigs.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm playing the long game on that one. We'll see how he fits in as the season goes on. He's a talented player.
Yes.
Rhett's a skilled guy, and as long as he's putting up points, everyone's probably going to be happy. I haven't watched any of the Mavericks games closely, but along with that talent comes the turnovers, and we'll see how the team responds when that starts happening.
And Sam, we've always loved some of the stuff Pitlick did here, but then we hated some of the stuff that Pitlick did here. I mean, throwing a stick at the North Dakota game, and like Zbeek said, he'll make a great play one time, and then he'll drop a puck at the blue line as he's coming in, and all of a sudden the puck's going the other way. So it was kind of frustrating, love-hate for us here.
Yeah, Ben Clymer and I 2 years ago in the booth, we kind of had like a knowing glance in the booth when Pitlick would do something like that. And that happened probably about every other game where that would occur. I didn't feel like that happened as much last year. He was a pretty dynamic player in a lot of the games we called, and that wasn't every game. That was about a third or, 30% of the games, 35% of the games. So it wasn't the whole season, but we saw him put on a show a number of times. He was a co-points leader on the team with Brodzinski. So they needed that skill. They needed kind of that high upside, high ceiling, low floor kind of style of play, I think, because they struggled offensively at times. What was your guys' read on that whole situation with him not coming back? Like what I'm sure you've talked about it on the show, but what did you glean about why that didn't work out with him returning? Was that his choice? Was that the team? What do you guys think?
Well, I know, Vigs, you kind of had a couple things on that. You're like, I think one of them was he didn't really hang around this summer because he thought he was going to go pro, and a lot of the current players did hang together and practice together. And then probably the lateness of everything. Bob's like, we can't hang on to you or see what you're going to do for the longest time. Mm-hmm. So what do you think? It's kind of a combination of a lot of things, don't you think?
Well, as we've talked about, he wanted to pursue that free agent path.
After August 15th, I think it was. Yeah.
Yep. So I think he went into the offseason saying, hey, I want to wait for that. And it's pretty clear to me that Bob with this group in late April, early May, told them this year needs to be different. We need to do things in a new way if we want to get the places we want to go. You guys need to stick around this summer. In the previous years, guys went off to their hometowns, their skill development teams, did a lot of stuff on their own. Bob's like, this team needs to be different for us to be successful. And so there was a lot of team bonding that was happening. And I think when Rhett said, I want to pursue this free agent route, Bob said, well, thanks for all you did here. Good luck. And then when Rhett didn't find a pro contract to sign, he kind of had to scramble. And it wasn't going to be at Minnesota. And the family has some familiarity with Minnesota State. There are some fun things about that campus and that hockey program and their kind of engagement with that community. They're very passionate about it. So that's where he is. And I think there's no super hard feelings, but Rhett's a guy who got benched against BU in the regional final because he kept turning pucks over and wasn't changing his game and not playing in the game plan. If you want to win titles, it's hard to have people like that on your team. And I think this team is a lot easier to coach and manage when you don't have a player like that.
Interesting. Yeah, I looked at his numbers the other day. I think 2 or 3 goals so far in the first 3 series, a couple assists. I'm sure he's top line or at minimum top 6 over in Mankato.
Yeah, he's going to put up points. There's no doubt there. I think last year he led the team in multi-point games. He's got that explosiveness. If you're playing against a team that's not disciplined, Rhett's going to burn you. But if you're playing a tight tournament team that's ready for battle, Rhett could cost you some points.
I mean, in the CCHA, which I've seen a ton of, he's going to clean up. Like he's one of the most skilled players in it's a conference that's rugged, it's physical. There's not a lot of Rhett Pitlick skill. I mean, he's gonna clean up in some of those bottom tier CCHA games.
I think when you're playing Minnesota, the teams change their game plan so much to just focus and lock things down. I think when it's peer against peer in the CCHA, it's going to be a little more open for him. So I have no doubt he will put up 50 points this year.
Yeah, that
he
tracks.
Will.
Yeah, point a game for sure. Probably more.
Probably
good
more.
for him. And then somebody got to pick up both Pitlick brothers, put them on a line with somebody else in the NHL, AHL. Because is Rem playing anywhere right now?
He's not playing anywhere right now. So, also a talented player, a lot of skill. One of the best practice players I've ever seen. Some of the skill he could pull off in practice was just unbelievable. So,
there will be a brothers line for St. Thomas this weekend with a Gophers connection. So Corey Leyland, former Gopher, Tommy's assistant, his 2 sons are wingers on the same line. Luke Leyland and Casey Leyland. Just a little brotherly love.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Because I'm guessing they probably grew up as Gopher fans because that's where Dad was.
Oh, yeah. I have no doubt about that. But Rico Blasi had a good quote this week, too. He said, so the Leylands connected for a goal in the Vermont series, and Rico said, when I looked over at Corey after that goal, the fist pump was just a little different. Because I think it was Casey setting up Luke. Casey doesn't have his first goal yet, but that was his first collegiate point, and it came to his brother. Pretty cool.
Well, definitely cool. Well, let's get into that here in a bit. But first, we need to hear from a couple more sponsors.
Are you a hard worker? Then you need a soap that works just as hard as you do. Look no further than Duke Cannon and their seasonal selections, including Trophy Game, Buck Moon, and the ever-popular Candy Corn. Grab yourself Duke Cannon's big-ass brick of soap today and try it out yourself. Climb aboard the Duke Cannon train and get the best in men's hair care, beard care soaps, deodorant, and cologne. Smell like you give a damn with Duke Cannon. Work harder, smell better. It's tailgating season and Cub Foods is your go-to grocery and liquor store. Why scurry around town picking up all your game day needs when you can go to one store? Look no further than Cub to grab your hamburgers, hot dogs, brats, chips, veggie platters, deli cold cuts, party trays, and desserts all in one place. Be sure to hit up Cub Liquor before you head out to grab drinks, all your tailgaters are sure to love. Go to your local Cub on your next shopping trip for all your tailgating essentials.
Of course, we thank Duke Cannon and Cub Foods for sponsoring the GPL podcast, another group of local companies we love that they support us. Vigs, oh, there. Vigs got the flow.
Got a little flow.
Definitely got the flow there, Vigs. Another home and home series with St. Thomas and Minnesota Vigs. And the first time Minnesota gets to play on home ice. This has got to be one of the later home ice openers, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a little weird. The football schedule was so front loaded that I think the hockey schedule got pushed back a little bit. Like I think the Gopher football team has already had 5 or 6 home games.
Yeah.
So I think just campus trying to figure that out is one reason. And we've got the early start on Friday because of the homecoming parade.
Weird time.
Yeah.
It's going to be a late arriving crowd, I think, unfortunately.
Or none arriving, because that's going to be tough to get. You got to get there early. The roads will close.
Yeah, with the homecoming parade, get there early. I know the prepaid parking is a popular option for people. Or, my favorite way, park over by Blue Door Pub on Como and walk your way over. That's always a good way, too.
Well, it's going to be interesting. I'm glad we finally get to see some Mariucci or play on Mariucci ice, Vigs. Minnesota's coming off a big weekend. St. Thomas is coming off of a bye weekend kind of early in the season. What's your initial thoughts, Vigs?
I think this will be an important game for Minnesota to come out fast. We've seen them play really well against Air Force, Omaha, UMD early in these contests. So I think that's something to really continue. I think some players, when they get on the Mariucci ice, there is kind of the awe for these young players of getting in front of the fans. And, you can't let that distract you from what you're trying to do to be successful. And Minnesota probably should try to focus on just getting their ground game going. That's something that Bob Motzko really talks about every year with his team. Get rid of the summer hockey habits, get pucks deep, get to work. And that's something that you see out of the Huglin Nevers line with whoever they're out there with. Maybe they get to start to set the tone. But I think it'll be real important for them to play smart early.
And interestingly enough, they're actually doing a fire sale of tickets. And I looked at the available tickets. There really wasn't a ton of tickets available for this game. But they really want to try to get it full for a home opener.
Yeah, $24 for the 24 opener is the deal. Motzko is really hoping that they get the sellout for the first game of the year.
And Sam, you're going to be on the radio call on ESPN 1500. So it'll be nice that you'll be on our side of the press box, not the TV guy side. So it's more fun. It's more fun on this side. Yeah. Come on. Oh, it's more fun on our side anyway.
It's a party. Well, I don't have to walk a million steps to get a cookie or a cup of coffee. Got to walk all the way around the concourse. Now I'm going to be right there. So that'll be good. I haven't called a game from that side before. So that'll be fun too. I think the Tommies, this for them is kind of like the Super Bowl of the non-conference season, at least. This is a pretty meaningful game for a lot of players on their roster. 21 Minnesotans. A lot of them had a circuitous route to come back to play for the Tommies. They played elsewhere. The Tommies recruited them off the portal, and they transferred over. A lot of them are super familiar with that Gophers program. So this game just means a lot. This series means a lot to them. A chance to prove themselves. And the Tommies have been viewing all these in-state rivalry games as measuring stick games. That's what you want to get to as a D1 program. And they've slowly started to pluck a couple off. They beat St. Cloud State last year. They beat Mankato. They beat Duluth in an exhibition game. They beat Bemidji State. They've basically beaten everybody except Minnesota. And they went to overtime with them last year. So I think the Tommies have every opportunity to steal a game. It's going to come down to goaltending for the Tommies. They alternate goalies. You're probably going to see 2 of them in this series. And can they score? Can they get enough offense to keep up with the Gophers? Because we know the Gophers are an established product. They have so much skill. Tommies are going to have to score 3 or 4, I think, to win these hockey games.
Yeah, it was interesting. I asked Aaron Huglin what kind of identity do you think the Tommies have? And his answer was, I think they think they're a talented team. They want to play a skilled game against us. And, he didn't have to say that, any louder in italics. You could just tell there's we're a pretty skilled team. And if you want to play that game, let's do it. And you could almost feel that out of him in the question.
That's a good quote. The Tommies do have this year, I think, the ability to out physical a team like the Gophers, and they didn't have that until this year. But the second year as a D1 program, they had a really good freshman class, and then they just had to get older. And that freshman class is 2 years older now. Plus, they've recruited some grown men. Like, they got a couple CC guys from last year, Chase Foley and Ray Christie, and a big brute, Cage Sturzer from Lindenwood, on the transfer portal. And they've added just such a maturity, such a strength to their team that, a young team like the Gophers might, I'm not saying they will, the Tommies might be able to push them around a little bit. I think that's what they'll have to do to win this game, is to make the Gophers uncomfortable and force the Gophers to commit some penalties, something they don't often do. Was there a game against Duluth where they didn't commit one? I think.
No, they did both nights, but
and the coach is not happy with those penalties either.
No, I'm thinking of the Wild. I'm mixing up the Wild and the Gophers right now. I apologize.
Too much hockey for you.
Carry on. That was a mistake.
But Viggs, he talks about St. Thomas trying to push Minnesota around. I think that's one of the things that Minnesota has. They do have size. They might not have learned to use that size yet, in the checking department. But in the physical department and controlling the game, I think they've used their size very well in protecting the puck and doing the other things besides checking.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've noticed against St. Cloud, against Omaha, against Duluth, is that Minnesota has used their size to buy time and protect the puck. And so I've seen those teams try to push Minnesota around, because historically that's worked really, really well. And especially in the St. Cloud and Duluth game, even when there was that after the whistle physical stuff, Minnesota held their ground pretty well, especially the defensemen. They're all pretty big except for Mike Kester, but everybody else on that blue line has some size and sturdiness to them. Cal Thomas especially. If you see guys try to go after him, that'll be an interesting bout. That's kind of a heavyweight match in college hockey, so it'll be interesting to see. But, you could definitely tell St. Thomas last year when they score goals, those celebrations were a little extra turned up. They were maybe to 11. They want to win this game, so I think you'll see that energy. So that'll be interesting to see for an early game. Sometimes these 5:30 games can be a little interesting for guys getting ready and the energy if the building's filling up late. But I think that is a key thing to watch. The other thing to watch for Minnesota is the goaltending. I'm not super concerned about Nate Airy yet, but he hasn't really seen a lot of pressure. And if he gets that against St. Thomas, we'll see how he handles it. Soulier, obviously a veteran guy. He's pretty mature and he'll handle it just fine.
All right, now hold on here. Sam, I saw a visitor in the background. Who's the visitor? Got to tell us about the dog.
All right. So for those on YouTube, they just saw my 80-pound black lab mix Captain climb up on the couch behind me and curl up on probably a blanket there. He makes a cameo in literally every podcast I've ever done down here. So you got the Captain experience.
Nice.
Say hello. He's probably going to park there for the rest of the night.
Well, when we first started doing video, my dog, who's no longer with us, Honey, used to sleep on the floor right behind me. She just stayed there the whole time, just kind of like, what are you doing? What's going on? So it's nice to have our furry friends on the podcast as well.
Yeah, they want to be the center of attention. That's for
of course. Sure. Of course. Viggs, you mentioned the goaltending, and Friday night when some of those goals started going on air, I was getting some texts from Nick Angel. He's like, I'm really worried about goalie. I think we should have done this. I'm like, I don't know. But Angel was concerned about the goaltending.
Bob said he's going to give these guys at least until November to figure things out. So I wouldn't be concerned yet. Ari hasn't played a lot in the last 2 years, so that's part of the process. He's a different goalie for Minnesota. He's on the pad slides a lot. He's on his knees a lot. But when you're 6'4", you can play that way. So just getting comfortable finding the puck in front of college traffic is going to be important for him because it's so different than practice.
You think Ari on Friday, Soulier on Saturday?
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
That's kind of been the trend so far. I think it's an easier start for Ari to play in front of Mariucci and some place he's familiar with. Soulier, you give him the experience of the NHL building. I think he's happy to be a Gopher. He wanted that Big Ten experience for another year, and I think he's happy to be where he is. I see him out there at the end of practice every day taking extra shots. He's not acting like this is a vacation retirement year. He wants to compete and do what he can to be a good teammate.
That's got to be my favorite stat for this game is that Soulier was 0-5 against the Gophers last year, and now he's a Gopher. That's wild.
Can't beat him, join him.
I bet it's great. I mean, the Penn State was known for a lot of shots, not a lot of defensive discipline. I bet it's nice for Soulier to have a blue line of this caliber in front of him, and I think he's shown that through 2 games that he's pretty good. And for Bob Motzko to compare him to Justin Close in the preseason media day, that was pretty telling. So I think I'm predicting Soulier will be the guy down the stretch. Absolutely could be off base, but I'm going with Soulier. I think he's the favorite right now. I think the betting money would be on Soulier, and that's who I'm going with.
All right. Well, what do you think about this weekend then, Sam? What are your predictions?
Oh man,
I know.
Well, only one team is paying me now, so I don't have to toe the line.
Smart man.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a very gritty split. I think the Tommies will steal one here, and I don't know which game it's going to be. I think if it's game 1, I think the Gophers would respond. I think they would win game 2. If the Gophers win game 1. Then I think the Tommies would need to get great goaltending the next night, try to win a low-scoring battle at the X. I think that's the scenario I'm going to go with. I think the Tommies get the Saturday game, technically the home game with a lot of purple in the crowd. I think it's going to be another classic in St. Paul. So 1 for the Gophers, 1 for the Tommies. I think 2 good hockey games.
I think there'll be a lot of maroon in that crowd also, Viggs. But St. Thomas will take it because it's going in their pocketbooks. What's your prediction?
I think we see the Gophers pull out a multiple goal lead on Friday pretty quickly and cruise to a win. I think we see a much closer game on Saturday after Rico kind of circles the wagons and says we have to play differently. But I think Minnesota's just got too much talent, gets out of their end too easily, and will win both games.
I'm all for that. I haven't predicted a sweep in a while, so I'm going to predict the sweep for the Gophers. Of course, our predictions are all over the place. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're way off. That's what's so fun about it.
It's hard to be way off, in college hockey if you go with a split. That's why I went with the split. I can only be off by 1 game maximum.
That is true. That is true. Well, Sam, thanks for joining us. I mean, your first time guest on our show. We're going to have you back again.
I would be overjoyed to come back on this show. It only took you 268 episodes, but we finally got there. 14 years.
Well, you were probably like 19 years old when we started.
You might actually be spot on with that. 2010. It probably was 19. Probably would not have been able to conduct myself on a podcast. So, yeah.
I think our youngest guest was Drew Cove at, I think he was 18 at the time, or maybe 19, Viggs.
Yeah, he was a little cautious about the Liney's Summer Shandy as his beer of the week. So,
but it was fun having you on, and I appreciate you coming on with us. Viggs, you got anything in the hopper right now?
We're starting to look at who are the kings and barons of college hockey. So look for that coming out pretty soon here on GPL.
Okay, hold on, Viggs. You mentioned you walked down to the Quarry Cub. So without doxing yourself online, like what area are you in? Because I'm a Roosevelt Street guy over here. I'm super close to Corey.
Yeah, I'm in Wyndham Park. So we've
Nice.
talked about it before. I look out on Wyndham Park ice rinks during the winter. So I've talked about it quite a bit on the GPL podcast, and that's where I am, Northeast Minneapolis.
Very nice. I used to be over on 28th and Ulysses. I've since moved to Roosevelt on the St. Anthony side, but I used to be right there.
We're right next to each other.
All right, we're neighbors.
Yeah,
Cool.
Sounds good.
Cool.
I am not anybody's neighbor. I'm down in Belle Plaine, so
Oh,
that's just how it is.
they have internet down there that works on StreamYard?
Barely. Mediacom, I'm a little unhappy with. Fiber is coming this fall. They've wired the fiber right behind our house, just waiting for them to come in and bring it in because I had fiber in Norwood, Young America. And it was awesome. And I can't wait to have it back. So it'll be fun.
Crystal clear, I got to say. Good
oh,
job.
It's fun. It's fun. But that's going to do it for this episode of the GPL podcast. We thank Sam Ekstrom for coming on the show. Next week, we've got Paul Caponegri coming on to help us preview the Big Ten season. For those of you watching live, stay tuned for some overtime. For the rest of you, we'll catch you next week on the GPL podcast. All right, Vigs. Ooh, another really dark one. What you got today?
So this is courtesy of Rob Shield. I get to play some
Ooh.
golf with him this week, which was exciting. I mean, October 20th golf in Minnesota, unbelievable. So this is a stone beer that he gave us. It's a black IPA aged in rye whiskey barrels and bourbon barrels. 11.6%. So it's like a loaf of bread. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers to you. Yeah, Eric Shearhorn, when we went to overtime, Viggs was pouring himself something dark like that. He literally said, that's like a loaf of bread.
Not gluten-free.
No.
Okay, Taylor Kearns, a.k.a. Mote, wants to spill. I don't think anyone knows who the Minnesota voter is.
No, I know. I'm not going to spill it.
Oh, you know.
Yeah.
He's not going to spill, Mote. That's just how it is.
I'm not going any more hints other than it's not Jess. Can't pull my leg on this. If he says
what you mixing that old fashioned with? If it's probably gone, but what was it?
We got a little sipperoo left. So this was, well, first of all, I'll take you through the whole process.
Yeah.
This is a Waterford Crystal glass. So Waterford. Oh, there we go. Full screen.
Yeah.
So Waterford Crystal comes from Southern Ireland. There's a factory there, pretty little town near the southern coast. They produce the crystal that makes a lot of the big trophies in sports. If there's a crystal trophy, it probably came from Waterford. This is a Waterford Crystal glass. Black Bush Irish whiskey. So that's a Northern Ireland whiskey. A little simple syrup, homemade. A cocktail cherry, orange bitters, and an orange rind. That's the recipe. And some square ice.
I need
big ice.
That sounds really good right about now. Oh, jeez.
Pretty good.
What kind of bitters? Is traditional Angostura bitters? Do you have a Fee Brothers?
Yeah, nothing. Probably the same one I've had the last 7 years in the cupboard that never runs out. Yeah, that one, the orange bitters. You know what, Jupe? Piqued my interest with your brandy old-fashioned comment earlier. Recently,
I was getting ripped for it, by the way, but I'm willing to try anything, and it was good.
No, I think the old fashioned is versatile. We've done an espresso old fashioned, so it's it's a little whiskey. It's chocolate bitters, espresso could go decaf, could go caffeinated. Some chocolate shavings on top, and brown sugar simple syrup. Smooth, delicious. Especially if you like a little coffee hint in there. It's really good.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've done the Demira sugar simple syrup before for some of my old fashions, so it's a good way to go.
It's the at home mixology is great, especially in the winter months. It's cold outside. You got nothing to do. It's dark at like 5:00. Open the old cocktail recipe book.
That does start to suck. I get up in the morning, I come down to the office because this is my office, podcast studio, and man cave all in one down here.
Mm-hmm.
I come down here and it's so dark, and I'm like, ugh.
You just need to add the home bar down there to make. Then you never have to leave.
No, I do have to leave once in a while, but I do love it down here.
You got to go take pictures at the game between the benches. I get it.
One day a weekend. The other day of the weekend, you can home bar it.
I do home bar it. I home bar it, and then I'm drinking and I'm tweeting at the same time, and that's where you get in trouble. But I don't care. I'm just having fun with it. What does Mote mean when he says, "Can we play yes, no, OT"?
He wants to find out who the voter is.
Oh gosh, nah.
Mote, there's one voter who thinks they're the best.
It's Don Lucia.
He saw my tweet on X, Twitter.
It's
reached out
Don.
to me with a
and
big
how
smile.
pissed is the Don at St. Thomas? He's just gotta be pissed with them.
I'm not saying that I'm not confirming or denying that, but he is.
Beeks, you and I talked to him at the Frozen Four, and I didn't get really too much of a sense of it, but you could tell he was at least publicly disappointed.
There's good Catholics in Don Lucia's mind and bad Catholics. And when you double cross like that, you're not on the good side. So
the CCHA did not build in an exit fee into the agreement.
Bit of a mistake, huh?
There was no consequence.
They just wanted a team. So, this new D1 team. Let's get him in here.
Yeah. They've got Augustana now. They're good.
Probably a better fit, really, for their league, too. I mean, St. Thomas is on a trajectory where they want to be like a Marquette kind of institution, They want to be bigger than the teams in the CCHA. So,
yeah, Big East.
And there still could be more shuffling. You never know with, the Summit League, maybe Denver and North Dakota go off and do their thing, and I still think Western Michigan and Miami may not really fit the NCHC so well these days. There's gonna be some shuffling. I mean, they're bringing in Arizona State too, so it's gonna be crazy.
We could have a college hockey conference with, two sides to it. Like two divisions within
East and West or something like that.
Before long. Yeah. If we get a 12er, like if we get a 12 team or 14 team conference, that could definitely happen. I think that conference realignment, it's not as prevalent in college hockey, but it's prevalent. It's something is going to happen every year, I think, to change the landscape.
What do you think, Viggs?
I think Josh Fenton probably knows best.
Former UND employee and now running the Summit League.
There definitely feels like there could be like a Summit League NCHC at some point kind of thing.
Because what is it? Omaha, North Dakota, and Denver are already in that league in other sports, correct? Is there others?
St. Thomas.
St. Thomas, yeah. So.
Oh, that's right. So you've already got 4 teams.
Good start.
It's like a start. Yeah. It's like a start. If they get 2 more, they could kind of break off and do their own thing. So who knows?
You get Duluth. You get Duluth and St. Cloud to come with you. The other ones, we don't care about. But I think if Denver goes, CC will go. So
I would wait until the regional sports network thing
no.
kind of works itself out until if there's a way to capitalize on TV money, that I think that would be the catalyst to create that kind of seismic shift.
Well, and I think seeing what happens with the CHL and the revenue share and the roster limits and see how that all shakes out, that could have some real impacts on college hockey going forward. We're already seeing guys leave the USHL to go play major junior, knowing that they're going to be able to come back to college. So I think that wagon's in motion.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just obviously the Big Ten formed because they got a 16, blah, blah, blah. But there's not a lot of money in hockey for TV leagues.
Not yet. Maybe there could be. I think there's definitely potential. If they do it right, there is potential to do something.
True.
But we saw NCHC go away from Flow Hockey. Or no, CCHA went away from Flow Hockey this year. Yep. To pursue their own TV.
Midco Sports Plus is the new agreement.
So, you're seeing some stuff start to happen. So they want control.
There's probably a terrestrial TV streaming hybrid, and the Midco thing, it is probably exactly what it would be. Maybe it's not Midco, maybe it's something else, but I'm sure Midco will air some of these games on TV. Most of it'll be on streaming, but there'll be a terrestrial free TV element for some, with another revenue stream with people subscribing on the app. That's probably just the future of TV in general. And I think college hockey is already kind of in that space. It's just not mega dollars at the scale that you would, see in anything else.
The funny thing is, Viggs, that over so many years, we've always had those people who, I don't have cable, so I can't see FSN or Midwest Sports Channel. And I like the old days back, in the 80s when they were on Channel 29, KITN, the Kitten That Roars, blah, blah, blah. Well, now they're back on terrestrial TV. You can get a digital signal, little bunny rabbit ears, and get Channel 9 and Channel 9 Plus, which is the old former Channel 29, I think, or is it 23? Whatever. Hey, you can see these games if you want to see them, Viggs.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than it used to be. But even then, not all the games are broadcast. You still had those Colorado games that sometimes wouldn't be on the air, the Michigan Tech games that wouldn't be on, or the Alaska games wouldn't be on.
Yeah, people forget that, though.
People forget all about that. The league was different then, too. So, and of course, you never control the away rights.
Streaming's the future. Streaming is the future. That's why I keep telling people, get your Big Ten Plus package. Everything's going to streaming.
Did they jack up the price this year? You can't get a seasonal or team subscription now? Yeah.
You get everything or nothing. Which, I think they renewed mine. I think it was like $60. They kind of grandfathered me in. So $60 for all of Big Ten Plus for a year. I would have paid that for just the hockey package because I love the hockey package. I could turn on the women's game. I could see, Michigan playing, Michigan playing Mankato a couple weekends ago. I got to watch those games because they're on Big Ten Plus. Someone's saying, Ryan says $89 now. I'd pay the $89 for just the hockey package, but now you get everything. And if you want to see the volleyball team, if it's not on Big Ten Network or FS1, like you were talking about, Sam, you could see them. So I just wish they would change a few things, especially with Big Ten Plus. If it's on the regular network and someone's already paid for Big Ten Plus, they should be able to still see those games. I know they want to protect the TV, but there are people out there who pay for the Big Ten Plus program who may be in a market, either the cable market, maybe they live in Arizona or something like that. They don't get Big Ten Network.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you're paying money for the package, you should be able to get the network games as well. We'll see if that ever happens.
Big Ten Network games aren't on Big Ten Plus, you're saying?
No, they're on Fox Sports app.
The Fox app with a cable subscription?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, because then I always forget that if I'm trying to find the game on my phone.
Yep.
I'm always like, where do I go for this?
And sometimes it's not easy to find even on the Fox Sports apps. And
because it's not relevant to them, so they don't put it on the homepage. So you gotta
Yeah.
like dig in and find it. So there is like a game day page for Gopher hockey usually that has the links to all the right things.
Yes.
So sometimes
Since
you
we're
have to go
talking
there.
TV, how about this relic logo now? Valley Sports, no longer. FanDuel Sports Network.
that's okay. I never had Bally Sports Network.
Get the red out. Get the red out.
That is true to
You know,
get the
that red
better dead
Bally's-
than red. The
Yeah,
red is
get
gone.
that red Bally's logo out of there. The blue is so much more suited.
I think
Purple
I had
would've
Dish
been great
Network
too,
at the
so.
time, and Dish dropped Fox Sports North. I went to YouTube TV, and YouTube had just dropped Fox Sports North. So I never had Bally's when it switched over to Bally's. Now it's FanDuel Sports Network, so we're back to FSN North.
Yeah. Kind of right.
Kinda. Yeah, kinda.
More,
I'm on Fubo,
more
so
gambling
I
shoveled
get it.
down our throats.
More
Oh.
gambling, yeah.
I'm just too much for me. Old school guy. I don't need to hear about parlay bets and stuff all the time.
Hockey Day Minnesota will be interesting on FanDuel Sports Network North. We got the Hill Murray Pioneers -2.5 live line.
Oh,
I feel like Minnesota hockey star Dave Spihar on Twitter, who's not actually Dave Spihar, likes to put odds out there for high school games all the time. And it's just like just warms my heart to see him, speculate on the odds for 18-year-olds playing hockey.
Who would do such a thing?
it's just everywhere. It's just everywhere. And, I think they do it less for, I don't think ever, even when it was on there, I don't remember him talking the gambling stuff during the college hockey stuff. It just wasn't relevant enough. But everything else.
Yeah, I don't even know if FanDuel does college hockey lines. I know I always go to DraftKings because they do college hockey stuff on there.
Yeah,
which is always interesting to see.
It is. Yeah, it's interesting to see just who the market says is favored in a given game. And they only put like a handful of games on there. I've just peeked at it just out of interest, and I don't think there's a lot of people in on the college hockey wagering circuit.
Andrew's saying, Bally's was gambling too. Yeah, Rube says, yeah, it's a casino, but I don't think Bally's is a casino, but FanDuel, I mean, you can't escape those FanDuel ads for in every location when there's a sporting event on. So I think that's a little more of a gambling theme there. I haven't seen a broadcast yet, so since I don't have it, I think there's only been a couple, maybe just the one Wild broadcast, but
yeah, Bally's is a casino. FanDuel is a sports book. Kind of a distinction there.
Yeah.
So I'm sure FanDuel sees some potential growth here with all that stuff.
The regional network. I mean, they're still in. I mean, yeah, they're sponsoring it, but Sinclair still owns the stations. They're still in legal issues. I mean, the Twins are going to have something completely different. Who knows what happens at the end of the season with the Timberwolves and Wild? So, a name sponsor like Bally's or FanDuel can only do so much if you can't bring in the money to cover the cost of your network. That's in deep debt, Bees.
Yeah, I mean, the Twins next year, they're going their own streaming, right? Mm-hmm. So who knows what's going to happen to this FanDuel Sports Network if they're even going to make it past this season here, right? Because if you don't have summer programming,
you're dead.
What are people going to watch on that network and keep it on there? Like, it's not going to be on Fubo if there's nothing on there. Like, they're not going to pay.
Golf.
They used to do a lot of poker, Texas Hold'em stuff.
Yeah, we're going to see Paige Sporonic and some old guy playing golf on there, and then like the Great Outdoors show and
cornhole, darts,
warehouse games, which I actually would watch if there were like celebrities on there doing the warehouse games or old retired athletes. I'd much rather see Frank Thomas play yard games and sell Nugenics or whatever he sells on all these sports ads.
But you look at, Sam, you're a young guy getting in, you're a young broadcaster. I mean, it's got to be scary environment compared to what it was in the old days. I mean, you're doing a lot more now. You're on a podcast network where you're doing all this other stuff. Back in the day, you could rely on like a Gopher job and maybe have a little side job here, but the whole broadcasting environment is just completely different these days.
Yeah, no doubt it's unstable. There's no shortage of opportunities to call games. If you just want to call games, you can do it now more than ever, because everything, high school, college or pro, there are avenues to call those games. Like I got my start calling high school everything for public access and for streaming. Like there are a lot of avenues for me to get reps when I was young. If you want to do this as a full-time job, good luck. It is so hard to nail that down. And I'm fortunate that I get to work in sports in the podcast industry. That's my full-time job. A lot of people don't have that luxury in this business. I mean, it's hard to reach a point where you can literally only broadcast sports. There just aren't that many opportunities. You probably have to have a pro play-by-play job for a network, or for either whether it's national or for a team. And the landscape's changing so much. Costs are all being shaved. I mean, these companies, we talked about this, was it before the show, are going remote with their broadcasts to save money. So it's not super conducive now for the aspiring play-by-play broadcaster. You can call games. You can definitely call games, but you're not going to make a lot of money for it. And it's a tough lifestyle to live. And, and I lived the lifestyle. Like, you do high school games 4 nights a week for $75 a game. That wears on you. You've got kind of a short amount of time that you can do that before you burn out.
And that's kind of what I think happened to Charlie Beatty. He was a young guy. He kind of got his break at the high school tournament when McLeod said something wrong on the air. He came in and filled in. I actually had Frank Mazzacco text me as I'm driving home. He's like, what happened? What happened to Doug McLeod? I'm like, I'm driving home. I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, I like this guy who's calling the game. And Frank, a lot of times, didn't like a lot of guys calling games. He's like, this guy sucks. This guy sucks. This guy sucks. But no, he really liked him. And then sure enough, Charlie's calling the next couple seasons. But I think Charlie kind of got frustrated with the industry. And he fully just went with his wife, moved to North Carolina, and got out of the business. Yeah. So like you said, it's tough.
Yeah. And Charlie's a good friend of mine too. And I know the whole story, how, and remember, he was on the rise, man. Like he was doing the Gophers.
I loved how he called the game. We've had him on the podcast.
Yeah. No, I'm sure you have. And he was prepared to do MNUFC sideline reporting, and then the pandemic hit. Yes. And then a bunch of stuff changed. I think he lost the MNUFC job, and then they went to Apple, so that was going to be gone anyway. And yeah, he made a decision with his family to uproot and do something different, and just kind of got discouraged by the business. And there's a lot of demand for these jobs, and when you have an opportunity that you feel like is in your grasp and you lose it, it's hard to get it back. So I get where he's coming from. And it's funny, I ran into Charlie in the Dallas airport back in April, out of the blue. Out of the blue, just bumped into him. He was coming back from vacation. I was coming back from vacation. We were both connecting, bumped into Charlie Beatty, which was awesome. I love Charlie. He's such a pro. He's such a good friend. And I hope he's living the life. I think he's out in Charleston. Hope so too. I think he's in Charleston. Amazing city. Okay, yeah. Amazing golf. I hope he's having a great time, because that is a city I could live into.
And no offense to the success you've had the last couple of years, but I was like, I think Charlie could have done it for years and years and years for Gopher hockey, because the Gopher hockey job is prestigious. It has been. You watch Minnesota movies and you hear Frank Mazzacco calling a Gopher hockey game in the background of like Fargo.
Yeah,
And-
it's tough though. Like you just see what's happening with Gopher Hockey TV the last 5 years.
Mhm.
It's in a weird state, just like college hockey is kind of in a weird state. So the
Lost a lot of
stability
control.
is just not there right now, and it's very complicated for how it's going to go forward. Because I don't think Jim Rich is going to be calling games for like the next decade.
Mm-mm.
So there's definitely going to be more churn with this in the future too.
Yeah, there's a fluidity to it. And yeah, I mean, I think Fox has positioned itself locally as your source for college hockey and local sports in general. They've got that Vikings deal, and it seems like the right home for right now in this TV climate.
And
So
it might
we'll
seem the right home for Twins baseball too, because
that's the next huge domino, right?
Yeah.
Who has the inventory for a Twin season, 162 games? Who's going to be able to air that? Will it be a combination of over the air and app, like just app exclusive broadcast? That's what I'm wondering, because I don't know who can take on that much tonnage unless it's a new network, and that is so hard to launch. Launching a new network sounds terrible in this environment.
And the weird thing is that the talent in this town is off the charts. And I'm not talking about the broadcasters. I'm talking about all those people behind the scenes, the cameramen, the audio guys. Literally the top people in the industry are here. And that's why Gopher hockey was great for so long, because it's, the same people controlling the camera at the Gopher hockey games are doing the Wild games. Same
Absolutely.
audio guys.
Yep.
So the local union that's been doing a lot of work here for multiple different companies do such an excellent job. You get spoiled, and then you see a student broadcast in Michigan and you're like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? Well, it's not just the people calling the games, these are students learning. Whereas you see a Gopher podcast, this is literally a professional high-end broadcast that a lot of schools do not have access to.
Yeah. I'm glad you said it and not me, because I was thinking it about the other school, like the other broadcasts on BTN Plus. If you're scrolling the dial trying to watch some other games, it might not be the best experience, and that's a budget thing. I mean, they're not paying longtime veteran broadcasters. They're not paying professional technicians. They probably have a very basic. It might not even be a truck. It might be kind of like a control room with a few keys. And hey, the kids that are calling those games and working, they're getting valuable experience.
Bingo.
It's great for them. It's not as great for the consumer.
Correct.
Especially if you're paying for the app and you're paying $89 and you say, I want to watch a good Michigan broadcast, and you're not getting it. That would be frustrating. And that was a point of pride for me with Fox 9, the last year. The standard of broadcast never dropped off once. Like I felt like with all the turmoil going on, with all the, Bally Sports and the regional sports network, the quality of the broadcast was always really, really good. And that was a point of pride for me.
I see the room wrenching. Isn't SCSU a top media school? Yes, they are. But that's where they're learning to become the broadcasters of the future. Well, not just broadcasters. You got, producers and directors. A lot of the behind the scenes people started at St. Cloud, and you never see them, like Chris Withers, who was a longtime Gopher hockey producer.
And I think there's competition at SCSU for who gets to do the camera, who gets to do the production. At some of these other schools, it doesn't feel like there's a pecking order. It's like they are green. And Minnesota partners with Rush Media for a lot of that production stuff. Wisconsin does not. And it's very evident in the two broadcasts, even for a streaming product, between the two. And some schools choose to invest in that, and other schools don't. And I think the Tommies have done a pretty good job with their production stuff. I've always been impressed with their broadcast. Like, I think they're doing a good job with it. So,
yeah, those are pros. Mike Gallagher kind of running the show over there. They've got, I don't know anything about producing TV. I just, talking to a microphone, but there are more screens than I've ever seen. It's like a rocket ship in there that they're using to make that broadcast go out. So yeah, and once you get the new rink and some good sight lines and a better environment, I think it's going to look really good. So look forward to that. I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of the gold standards in the new NCHC.
Like
Notre
Corey
Dame
said,
does-
like Peacock, the quality, the streaming, the buffering, like no issues with Notre Dame broadcasts. They do a great job.
Definitely. I was during the commercial when the video was playing, I looked on Twitter and I saw our stream was about 8 or 9 seconds behind on Twitter. I mean, that's how fast it was. I'm running this from a little MacBook Air, and it's getting out to the consumer, the people watching or live right now, within 10 to 15 seconds. I really wish some of the other networks could figure that out, because I'll be watching on YouTube TV, so that's already behind. I'll be watching. I was watching the Vikings game this past weekend. I was getting the notification on my watch that a score happened long before, 30, 40, 50 seconds before. I wish some of those broadcasters do better. Video does better than audio. I listen to KFAN a lot at times, and sometimes that stream is 1.5 to 2.5 minutes behind. And I've been told that they want to build in that buffer in case someone loses their connection. I'm like, no, I don't. Just give us the stream as close to live as possible. I would just love that. But I just think it's weird. We're doing a little broadcast here. We can get it out within 10 to 20 seconds, and the big networks cannot.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I've noticed that lately with watching cable sports, like the T-Wolves last night. That felt like it was about a minute behind Twitter. And TNT went out for a little bit at the end of the game.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, it was super frustrating. So I wonder if it's because just so much technology, whether it's in your home or whether it's on the site of the broadcast, it's just going off of Wi-Fi. Like,
hold on, I'm being interrupted here. Vigo, what are you doing?
Well, we got kind of a whiskey aficionado here. I thought Sam needs to see a little Stag Junior.
Ooh.
So,
very nice.
It's a little tiny.
Is that 80 proof, or is that a little stronger?
A little stronger.
Little.
Let's see. 125.9 proof.
Little stronger.
Little stronger than 80.
All right.
We've been noted to get
Rube would like this.
toasted in overtime. Been noted to get toasted. I mean, 1 year we did a live broadcast on that little Mixler app during one of the Alaska Anchorage games. It was way up, started at 10 o'clock at night, and we're just doing a comment. I had somebody call in from their phone while driving in Michigan, and she was talking with us for a little bit, and it was just a blast. And I think by the end, the whole screen was blurry. I could hardly see a thing. I was just toasted. And I'm guessing some of the people like Rube and a couple others were part of that broadcast and remember that. That's why it's overtime. You never know what's going to happen.
There's got to be an archive of that somewhere, right? I mean, I got to go uncover that.
That Anchorage thing, I wonder. I might be able to find that.
So when did you switch to StreamYard? Because I work in StreamYard every day with Locked On. That's our like contractual agreement we have with them.
A couple years ago?
A couple years ago? Yeah,
a couple years ago.
They just came on the scene really hard the last few years.
They did. We first moved to video by using Zoom. And it wasn't bad because I had an account through work and I could kind of use that to get the free streaming to YouTube. And then Viggs was telling me one of the other local podcasts are using things on StreamYard. I'm like, okay, this is cool. We switched to it within a couple weeks. And, similar, we're live out on Twitter. We're live out on YouTube. We're live out on Facebook. We have the lower end account, which is obviously doubled in price. Some of the other accounts, I'm guessing the big corporate thing, you guys probably have a huge corporate type of account that covers a lot more. But we did try to go with another service. It was a little flaky for our first podcast this year. I'm like, I'm going back to StreamYard. So
yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. No, I like it too. It's pretty trusty. Sometimes, I don't know if you've noticed this tonight. Sometimes I think that it can't quite process we have a pretty good camera, pretty good mic, and my lips and the audio are just a little bit off, like 0.4 of a second off. I don't know if you've noticed that. That's my one issue with it.
Well, when I put some clips together later, I'll shift your audio just a little bit.
Oh, thank you. Sounds like a terrible pain. You don't have to do that for me, but
oh gosh,
you
just shift the whole track over and you're good. That's one thing I like to do, the local recording. We just started doing that last week, and I'm like, I could download full resolution. Even though we're in the 3-shot here, it gives us individual videos for everyone, and I could put something together without all the extra stuff. So that's kind of nice. So
that is pretty nice. Yeah.
And now it's got the AI clips too that it puts together for us.
Those are kind of weird though.
Which are interesting.
I'm just glad they went to full HD for the cheaper stuff, because it was one of the pro programs before, and 720p, it was just, we were all kind of soft. But it's hard to complain.
What's your favorite podcast that you're doing right now? The Vikings obviously have to be huge right now. I mean, they're cooking right now.
Well, they're the big dog everywhere.
We launched an expansion of our Minnesota coverage in 2022. So we built out our programming. So what I'm involved in is the Minnesota Football Party, which is kind of similar vibe to this, kind of a free-flowing hour-long Vikings talk Mondays and Thursdays. We go live. Then we use former Gopher legend Ron Johnson. He's a
I've seen him,
big talent with us. He does a show on Tuesdays. He's on our Thursday Viking show, Friday show. He does the post-game shows on Gophers and Vikings. He's super busy. Love Ron. But my favorite show right now, Eric, is probably the Minnesota Football Party. It's Arif Hassan, who's very, very unique, very smart, very polarizing.
In the details.
Oh yeah, very much into the X's and O's, but also like brings a snark to the equation that kind of just adds a little bit of adds some good tension to the show. And then Luke Braun is our resident Locked On Vikings host, and Luke Inman is on the show too. He's a pro who works with us at Locked On, so it's a good mix. Really enjoy that show, and we've been doing that now for several years. And the Vikings right now are such a hot topic. I mean,
they're always hot. They could be terrible, and that might be the best thing for you guys.
The NFL really is a 52 week a year product. It is immune to losses. Your team can be 2-5, 5-2, doesn't matter. People are going to tune in. It's the short season. Once a week, there's a scarcity to it, and people just crave it. It's wild when you do it every day on YouTube. You see the data, how much people engage with Vikings football compared to anything else. You can have a red hot Wild team, red hot Twins team. People don't care at all relative to a mediocre Vikings team. It's just we are addicts for the Vikings.
By far the king of the local sports market. By far.
Yeah.
We always have the joke that when the Vikings season ends, the media room at Gopher Hockey triples in size.
Yes.
Yeah. You get the TV crews out there finally. They've all been at US Bank Stadium. Yeah.
Although Fox is there and KSP is there pretty consistently, but Care and WCCO don't really show up until Vikings are done.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you this. So Vikings number 1. Who is number 2 when it's going well? So I think it fluctuates, right? Like the Timberwolves probably were number 2 last year because the Wild were down. But when it's going well for a given team, who is the number 2?
I think it's Wolves. Easy.
I would say so too.
Yeah. Like their audience potential is so much bigger than hockey that they can just be huge. And you saw this town when the Wolves went on their run last year. There was just so much pent up, like, oh my gosh, Justin Guard's going to wear every throwback jersey he's ever had every day of the week. And he's got 30 of them, and he's like, hopefully the run lasts that long, Justin.
The Twins could be good, but It seems like, yeah, they can win the division, but they're not going to go far in the playoffs. It's
It's
just
not
kind
as
of
passionate, I don't think, with the Twins. I think it's a little more like laissez-faire, like, oh yeah, I'll watch them.
Little older
Chill out.
fan base, probably more Midwest appeal across the Dakotas
yeah,
than the Timberwolves or the Wild. Like I think
a wider, much wider market. I
Yeah,
think their market is probably similar to the Vikings. Goes out like way out
Mhm.
to the Dakotas into Montana.
Mhm.
Probably very similar.
Yeah.
But come on, in 87 and 91, no one even thought about the Vikings.
Well, I think baseball was bigger back
It
then
was.
too.
It was,
Like, in
but
terms of
Minnesota was
audience.
winning. I mean, they went from worst to first. I mean, they had a lot of stories going on there. So,
Well, if you were around in '87, I believe the Vikings had a NFC Championship run that year, so you would have been able to kind of compare apples to apples, what it felt like in a
So,
Vikings
yeah.
run, what it felt like in a Twins run.
so the Twins run would have just happened because the 87 season would have ended in 88. I think that was
Correct.
That was the strike shortened year.
Yep. Very very
And
good.
Darren Nelson, everyone blames Darren Nelson, blah blah blah. I mean, Viggs, you were a little young then, weren't you?
I was a little young, but I was
gotta
at
make the catch.
Game 6 for the Puckett home run.
Oh,
I was in the building for that one, up in the right field, very, very top. Where there's that like extension of like infrastructure. I was up there, and we stayed for the team to come back out. It was just phenomenal.
my. And I will say the biggest sports star for me by far has always been Kirby Puckett. I kind of put him above everyone, Moss and everyone else. I just think he put a team on his back, like he said, and he delivered. And I haven't seen that from any other Twin or pro sports franchise here. I mean, yeah, Randy Moss is great, but then he was also causing trouble, here and there. I play what
Kirby
I
was
want to
causing
play.
trouble, but the media was a little different back then too.
Yeah, the media was different,
So,
but
he just was perceived as different. But
he was.
I think Joe Schmidt was on one of the other Pull Tab podcasts this week, and he's just like, Kirby was the one guy who could light up a room, just constantly, and that was Kirby.
And I think that's part of it too, his magnanimous personality, and then, yeah, he also made the big plays in the big games, and that's why I've always been so down on Joe Mauer. I've always been like, oh, how about a big hit once in a while, Joe? That'd be great. But that's just me. Reminiscing of 87 and 91.
Joe Mauer, I believe, won one playoff game in his career. One.
Yeah.
Just never got to see him in a meaningful situation. I mean, they were always getting swept down in the series.
The funny thing is, the one big hit he had against the Yankees, it was a big double. They called it foul, and it wasn't foul. I distinctly remember that play for some reason. I'm like going, that was his kind of chance, and all of a sudden,
who was the umpire?
Oh,
I should know this.
I wouldn't know.
People are always complaining about the umpire's name. Can't bring it to mind. I'm getting older.
Thoughts on the Lynx ending the other night?
Wow. Yeah, I parachute in for the playoffs with the Lynx, and then I have all sorts of opinions when I do parachute in. So we
used to call that bandwagon.
I am a bandwagon Lynx fan.
Oh, totally.
I thought that the call was egregious, obviously. I also thought that the Lynx were completely out of their minds in overtime. They couldn't handle the ball. They couldn't get a shot up. I thought Courtney Williams shot them out of the game, and she was really good for a lot of the season and in game one, but that hurt them pretty significantly. So I think there's definitely, like, in the Venn diagram of like reasons why they lost, there's a big circle of officiating. There's also a big circle of the Lynx did themselves no favors.
And then, like, it didn't help when the commissioner's wearing a New York skyline dress, or ESPN captures the Liberty coach saying, "Hey, embellish if you can. If you trying to get a call,"
and then
I'm like,
cutting the mic, and then cutting
yeah,
the mic.
it does get those conspiracy theorists up there because it's right there in front of us. We didn't miss anything, and then the NBA took down some of their tweets that showed her in that dress. It's just.
So what was she gonna wear if the Lynx won the game? Did she have like
I wonder that too.
She had a robe. She had a robe on, you know, or like a puffy coat she could pull over.
I think Adam Silver is thinking to himself, yeah, you know, I probably should have gone with the clover leaves and the green suit last year for the Celtics championship. Roger Goodell could have gone with a nice red and red and gold,
red and yellow Swift.
suit. Yeah,
or you could just wear a Swift, you know,
he's a Swift
friendship bracelet or something, you know.
Yeah, that would have been a good look.
Yeah, I had to refresh myself on Courtney Williams because I parachuted into the finals. I didn't watch anything, and I just kept like saying, like, what is she doing? Has she done this all year? And apparently, listening to you, she has. But I was just like, I've only watched 5 games. And I just don't understand what you're doing. So,
yeah,
it was
kind
tough.
of yeah. I thought I was watching Russell Westbrook. It was just like it was a lot of shots that just didn't need to be taken.
So I've got another nerd question here for you. Do you guys have a producer produce your StreamYard stuff, or is just one of you producing like we do here?
You're talking to him. So
okay. Yeah,
I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
But yeah, for a lot of the shows I'm producing, and that entails not a ton. I mean, you create a little overlay.
Yep.
With topics that you put on the screen, sort of like what you have now.
I got to turn the overtime one, by the way.
You bring up, there you go. Just like you had those ad overlays, doing the reads, we've got those really similar to what you're doing. And we've got the whole menu on the right-hand side. And then I take the audio from it and posted it for all the audio platforms.
And we still get a lot of listens. I know the Apple podcast, we still get a lot of listens too. So people are still listening to it, Vig. So that's good. It's not all about the live video all the time.
It's fun though. I enjoy our little community that we have built up here. Because like we were talking earlier about the ebb and flow stuff, I feel like we kind of fill the gaps on a lot of Gopher hockey stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, the other papers and networks don't cover Gopher hockey consistently from start to finish. But we are there most weeks for availability. I'm there, and you know, 1 or 2 games I'm usually there, and Chris is there, and Jupe's there. So we do what we can.
Would you say you have a monopoly on the Gophers hockey podcast space?
I don't know if we have a monopoly.
Drew and Nate pretty good.
Do okay. Jess with the Rink Live had his thing going there for a while, but that didn't work. You know, the Rink Live is going away from covering college hockey like they did.
Yeah.
But no one from the Star Tribune or Pioneer Press is there every week.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this is fun for us. I mean, it's you know, I've been doing this website for over 20 years now. It's you know, sure, you make a little money in advertising, but it's more about the fun and the access and trying different things. Like, I would have never imagined myself being a podcaster or doing live broadcasts, and it's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's an authenticity to it.
Yeah, the community of college hockey is great. You know, like when we reach out to Todd or Schloss or, you know, Cappy or Pizzo, like they respond and they're just like, yeah, let's do this. Adam Wodon, you know, people.
Oh, you said the bad word. You're going to get Rube going or some of those guys.
Hey, I mean, Wodon does his bit. You know, he does his thing. And like Derek Schooley from USCHO podcast replied to me in a tweet the other day. You know, it's a fun group we have going on.
I noticed you didn't mention Butchergrass. I don't know how you feel about Butchergrass, but even, I mean, he's got a big platform.
He
and
does.
He amplifies college hockey a ton.
I spoke to him at the little gathering, the USCHO party gathering in St. Paul during the Frozen Four. He's like, just message me on Twitter. My DMs are open. I'll come on your podcast early in the season. As DMs aren't open. At least not for me. I'm like, yeah, well, okay.
I've gotten the chicken parm retweet and comment though from
You
Bucci.
have.
So he's aware enough. He's just busy and he parachutes a little bit. You know, they've expanded their NHL coverage, I think, at ESPN quite a bit, taking more responsibilities, and he's good for the game. He's controversial, but he's good for the game overall.
You know, Carlson, I even like Schlossman. I feel dirty now. You know, Brad Schlossman out of the Grand Forks Herald. Nobody covers college hockey like he does. It's not even close. Him and Todd are probably the closest. But Viggs, when we went up there, it's not about their team and our team. It's more like it's the college hockey thing.
Yep.
And it's being able to talk to people who get it and have been doing it for so long that we stay out to the bar until it almost closes. And we had a great time in Grand Forks, and we did a live podcast for one of their suites last year, you know, like the Thursday before. You know, we had never done that before, but, you know, they are like, sure, come on up and do all this. And it was a blast. Had some technical issues. Of course, you're going to have that, but Viggs, we had a fun time.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine like some of the other like local pods who cover like the Wild or the Vikings just going, hey, Green Bay, Winnipeg, can you set us up in a suite? We want to do a live broadcast from your rink. I mean, can you even imagine the response or the silence? Probably the silence. Probably could easily imagine that. But like in college hockey, it's like, yeah, we'll make it work. We like you guys. We'll be fine.
And that just goes back to relationships. You know, Eric Martinson's been working up at UND for a long time, and we saw him so many years ago for years and years and years on end at the WCHA Final Five.
I once saw him taking a nap in the hotel of the Final Five.
I bet you did.
Yeah.
I
He's
bet
just
you
taking
did.
a little snooze, just resting his eyes after the championship. Long
You know,
heads.
I feel the passion to even like I sit on buses, I sit in coaches' rooms with these St. Thomas coaches too, and I feel their passion, which is still almost fan-like, even in their positions. Like they've constantly got games on all the time. They're watching on their phone, they're watching on TV, you know, before the games, and in every single game, they will give you a scouting report on every player. And they'll tell you what his brother's like as a prospect. Like, that's how in the loop these dudes are and how passionate they are about the recruitment process. Because you kind of have to be a sicko, right? Like, to be a recruiting addict, because it's so much work and it's so thankless. But these guys are just grinders at it. It's really fun to be around. That's probably been my biggest, like, eye-opener in the college hockey space, is just being behind the scenes a little bit and seeing like how in touch they are with every player nationwide. They've got it. They've just got a library on everybody. And you have to have a special passion for it, I think, to have that.
Definitely do.
How's Leon behind the scenes? I've heard he's a passionate assistant coach, recruiter.
He's the best. He's the best. Love him. Nothing but good things to say. I think that staff is super cohesive. I think Leon is like a perfect complement to Rico in a lot of ways. And he's been a beast, you know, talking to guys on the portal and getting them in. And I can't say enough good things. I feel like Leon could be an amazing head coach somewhere someday. I mean, I think he's got that kind of quality about him.
Yeah, I think Leon and Rico are both like very alpha guys. Like they just kind of want to come in and control situations and control, you know, the path of things. And it's always interesting to see them in the college hockey area and how they are perceived and how they come off and how they run their program. So I always love, St. Thomas has done some behind the scenes stuff with their staff and kind of show the personalities of their coaches. And I really appreciate that. I think it's a fun way to expose your program.
Yeah, I mean, watching them kind of toil through those first couple of years was pretty cool. Like to see what the plan was, to see the groundwork laid, and to see the patience they had with the process. Because when you're starting from literally scratch, you have to be all about the process, because you definitely can't be about results. And I thought they stuck to that really well, and they didn't get overly frustrated by those growing pains. And I think that was key. Like they had a kind of a 5-year build in mind, and it's really come to fruition pretty well. And that 5-year mark is going to coincide with the new arena, the new conference, everything that they dreamed of has happened. Now they just got to start winning, right? Like now you got to win conference titles to make that dream really come to fruition.
You got Peter here. Any insights on the new arena? Looks like they made a lot of progress in the last few months. I think I just saw a video of you yesterday or the day before of you could see it. No roof on it yet, but the whole bowl looks like it's there and ready to go.
Yeah, I know it's getting vertical. It's looking great. I can't believe that they crammed it into that area on campus. It's incredible what they're doing. They've hit a bit of a roadblock, and they haven't stopped building at this point, but they're encountering a little pushback from the community. They have to do a new environmental study. I know that's gonna ruffle some feathers. I don't know a ton, so I won't speak on it a ton, but I know that's what they're dealing with right now. But as far as I know, all systems go for next October. There should be hockey played there 1 year from now.
Yeah, that new study that I saw came out a couple of weeks ago. Basically said there's no environmental impact. The traffic impact is negligible. Don't worry about it. like they published all the feedback and commentary, and they had all their responses. Is like, yeah, it's all taken care of. Like if you look at traffic in that area during the day, it's not going to be any worse for a hockey game where there's 6,000 people going. Because look how many people come to campus every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the only question was like if there's a Thursday night game, that gets complicated. But hockey's a Friday, Saturday night most of the time, and basketball is not going to be that big. You know, it's just like it's not that many people coming to campus that aren't already coming. So
yeah.
I tweeted it in my past. If people want to see it, it's on my X, and you can go to the link and you can read the study and you can hear all the comments from their neighbors about what they're concerned about and all the responses from St. Thomas.
Yeah, I believe it is a fairly loud minority that's kind of raising the concerns. The city of St. Paul has been really supportive. And I this is just my personal opinion, I'd be surprised if there was any delay in building. I think that they're probably going to get this thing up on schedule, and it's going to be awesome. And I know, and they've had the benefit of like half a dozen, maybe a dozen like new rinks come up in D1 college hockey in the last few years. So they've kind of gotten those blueprints and gotten to check the boxes and say, this is what we want. This is what we don't want. So this should be a state-of-the-art facility. I mean, I went to Augustana last year. That was great. And this building's got like another 75 million pumped into it. So there's a lot to be excited about for sure.
Andrew thinks it's Don Lucia's buddies causing the hell just to get back at St. Thomas.
Lucia's buddies live in Wayzata, not in St. Paul.
Oh,
these people have been there for a while.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. It's fun. All right, it's past 11:30, guys.
All right. Awesome.
Thanks for coming on, Sam.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for drinking on the podcast. We need more people to do that.
I had an instinct. I thought this was the kind of show where it'd be kosher. Vigs, I'm going to be looking out for you at the Quarry Cub. I'll next time I'm pinching the melons over there, I'll keep my eye out.
Yeah, watch out for the avocados though. Don't squeeze them too hard.
Oh boy, Sam wrecked all the avocados. Damn it!
Again? Come on.
Just make sure you stay on here a little bit so everything gets uploaded for us. But good night, folks. We'll catch you next week. what is with those gray socks and yellow stripes? What is it? Jeez.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to come this week, but man, that number one voter, I just